Uganda is located smack bang on the equator. Um, it's very much Central Africa. And I have been interested in years in the story of the Lord's Resistance Army, the LRA, which devastated the north of Uganda for a very long time. It interested me because I've become very preoccupied with issues of justice and how you deliver it in Africa. And what you saw in Africa was the setting up, well, it didn't happen in Africa, it happened in The Hague, of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, because there was a feeling, especially by the human rights community, that it was very important for Africa to see an end to impunity. And the reason you were seeing so many cycles of violence in countries like Uganda and Kenya and Somalia and Sudan was that nobody was ever brought to book. And therefore, if you had a country where perhaps the justice system had been destroyed by a civil war, the ICC would provide that country with a court of last resort. And ending impunity would allow a community to come to terms with what had happened to it, to see justice being delivered, and therefore it would sort of help form a foundation for peace and future. And in Uganda, the ICC was actually invited in by Yoweri Museveni, the president of the day, and asked to deal with the Lord's Resistance Army, the LRA, and the perpetrators, the leaders of that movement. But these people were out in the bush, committing atrocities, raiding villages, killing and mutilating people. So for years, it was just an abstract thing. And then Dominic Ongwen, one of the commanders of the LRA, gave himself in to the authorities in Central African Republic. So suddenly this case became active in Uganda, and he was transported, he was shipped immediately to The Hague and is facing trial, and it's actually due to start in January. And I thought it was a very interesting case. I mean, a lot of people are really interested in this case because, yes, this man is accused of having led his rebel troops into raids on refugee camps and mutilating people and taking abductees and raping young girls and killing farmers. But the interesting thing is that he himself had been abducted as a child, possibly as young as the age of 9.5 years old. So you've got a very complicated situation because here's a court which is trying to deliver justice, but at the same time, people are saying, hang on, the person that you are prosecuting was himself a victim. And is it therefore right that he should face all these charges when he was abducted as a child? His mother was killed by the rebels. It was made clear to him that if he didn't cooperate with the rebels, he was going to die. He was brainwashed. He was told that everyone in his village would be killed if they didn't help. And so you've got this really complex case of a perpetrator, but also a victim. And it really kind of puts on the focus what the ICC and what court cases can deliver in places like northern Uganda, which have been traumatized by these kind of long, painful experiences. I doubt that Dominic Ongwen is going to be breathing free air for a very long time because the case itself is likely to last 2.5 years, if not 3, because he's had a huge number of charges leveled against him. Between 70 and 80 people are likely to testify as witnesses. And it's become a really big case. And it's partly, there are a lot of issues involved. One of the issues is the ICC needs to prove itself to Africa in some ways. It's become a very contentious court. A lot of Africans are saying this is a racist court because the only people who are ever accused by the ICC are black African warlords or ousted presidents, and how come they're always Africans? And so the ICC is looking for a case to show what it can do and present it in a positive light. But there are a lot of other issues which are more long term and more interesting, and they interest me. But will take years for us to see an outcome. Which is, for example, in northern Uganda, if you go to somewhere like Gulu, you'll talk to people in the human rights communities and religious leaders, clerics, and also the local imams, and they will say, this is not what we need right now. We need to reconcile. We need to talk. We need to forgive. And we don't need, the problem with a court case is it presents, a black and white vision of what happened. And a lot of people are saying, this is not the way to make peace. This is the wrong form of justice. And I'm just very interested in the right kinds of justice. There are many models now in Africa of what kind of justice are being tried. There's been something called Gacaca in Rwanda has been tried. There was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission tried in South Africa. And then there's this more traditional court case, which is the ICC court case in Uganda. And that was also applied in Kenya, but sort of came a cropper because of the resistance of the authorities in Kenya. So I'm just interested in, how does a community that's been traumatized make peace with the past? And I think, there are no easy answers. You just have to sort of follow these cases. And a lot of studies will be done and sort of end up seeing how do people feel about it in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, 20 years' time. I'm a skeptic about the ICC. I tend to think that confrontational justice is not the right way to reconcile a community because it requires the perpetrators to present themselves as completely innocent. This is the way the justice system works, and the accusers to paint them as being complete villains. And as we know, in life, we know that people can be lured or pressurized into doing wicked things, and that there's wickedness in all of us, but there's also goodness in all of us. And I tend to feel that the ICC model is not the right one to go down. But I'm going to be very interested to see if that's what a lot of African societies start to conclude, having seen it in action in Africa.
Well, I think delivering justice basically in Africa is like a very complex problem. I think it's just very complex. I'm from Sudan, and I remember in the Sudan, the civil war that broke out in Sudan in 2003. It is still going on today still. So I say it's like if the war or something break out in Sudan, it take forever to end. And also, I think the problem I find is that people do not necessarily work together to deliver the justice, because I think there are too many divisions in Africa, even in one country, especially even one country in Sudan. There are so many divisions within the country, even that they wouldn't even unite as a whole. I think that unification is very important, and I don't think that the people necessarily realize that if they unify, the problem is more likely to be solved.